Oh, here we are again, and we had some questions to go through, so we can just start. The first one is, why do stories belong in the house of compassion and not in the house of wisdom? So, the stories we tell about our own history, about the countries we live in, about when we met the Dharma and so on, relate in the first instance to us trying to have some compassion on ourselves, to establish an identity for us. And when we use stories to link to other people, to tell them about our feelings for them and so on, these are all ways of reminding ourselves that we are already connected. From the dualistic relative truth position, it is as if we're trying to build bridges of connectivity, pathways through which we can communicate. In the non-dual truth of our existence, everything is connected together because no phenomenon has any individual existence. So by opening to the ground, we experience the openness of the field, everything arising at once, including ourselves. And then our movement is a movement of connectivity within that field, because our body is always somewhere, our speech is directed to someone, and our mind is full of thoughts and sensations about something. But wisdom is silent. Wisdom doesn't tell any stories. Wisdom is relaxing into, opening to the fundamental or basic emptiness, which is the space of all appearance. Within this infinite silence, thoughts, feelings, sensations, memories, and so on arise as a movement which generates our sense of particular appearances. When we think and talk about situations, we are describing dreams. As some of us have looked many times, if I say I was born in Scotland, that Scotland doesn't exist. The particular constellation of events and people and weather that constituted the Scotland of my youth has vanished. Even when I seemed to be inhabiting that particular world, it was slipping through my fingers. All phenomena are ungraspable. So stories are the means by which we generate the illusory sense of appearance. By maintaining the non-duality of wisdom and compassion, we can be present in these stories with the other people who inhabit the stories without taking it as strongly real. It's not that the Buddha comes out of some pure realm into this defiled, ordinary, truly existing realm of samsara, but rather in the clarity of the Buddha's mind, when he sits in the Tushita Pure Land, the dimension that he entered into is a dream-like formation. From the very beginning of time, nothing has happened. Or we could say nothing is the only thing which has ever happened. Well, as we can see, every moment of our lives, we are constructing forms which vanish by themselves. When we awaken to the emptiness of these forms, we can relax our need to pretend that they are strongly real. So, stories help linking, which is the actual situation of all things arising together from the same ground. So then the next question is, how do the visualization practices of tantra relate to Dzogchen? So this relates to what we just talked about. When you visualize something, you are imagining something. You are saying, I can imagine a male, female figure, peaceful, wrathful, naked, or with clothes and ornaments. So the beings in other realms in samsara wouldn't be doing these kind of visualizations. The tantric deities may be slightly strange looking beings, but they are basically like us. They manifest as a kind of alternative identity. Their function is to let us see that we are imagining who we think we are. And that the more rigid your pattern of thinking, the more you demand that your version of yourself should be taken as the truth. When we feel relaxed and free, we can play with different identities. You can dress up in party clothes, you can dress as a clown, you can dress as a businessman. None of these formations is the total truth of my potential. The issue in terms of the ego self is that there seems to be some reliable, irreducible central point in who I am that I come back to. So I go out into the world, into different social situations, and I behave differently according to circumstances. So we can all accept that we have a range of aspects to our personality. But it's as if this core sense of myself is something fixed. It's like the noun and these other aspects of occupation, relationships, family membership status are like adverbs and adjectives. So the purpose of visualization in Tantra is to dissolve this residual fixed reference point. So you visualize the deity doing in a simple or complicated form, and then the deity dissolves into you into the deity, and then into emptiness. Then we see that the ground of samsara and the ground of nirvana is the same, is empty. There's nothing to hold on to. The ground is not a thing, and nothing which arises from the ground is a thing. So this understanding, when you experience it directly, is a very good way into the direct non-duality of Dzogchen. Because in Dzogchen, we talk a lot about the self-arising and self-vanishing or dissolving of thoughts and feelings and so on. But we can still, you could do this many, many, many times, but still avoid the experience of the dissolving of this fundamental reference point of I, me, myself. And if that is the case, then you remain inside a dualistic position of I, the observer, observing the coming and going of phenomena. Awareness or Rigpa is not an observer. The observing function is done by the dualistic consciousness. So it's vital that when we are observing the arising and vanishing, this means every subtle part of the field of experience, so that nothing, no trace of fixity or existence can carry on a pseudo-existence. So this links to the next question. How can we lose our sense of ourselves, our identification, by experiencing ourselves as Padmasambhava or a deity? Well, the key point here is that losing your sense, your familiar sense of yourself, is useful as a temporary experience in meditation, so that you see that it is a illusory formation, so that you can see that this sense of yourself Your self-identity is an illusory formation, because Padmasambhava is also an illusory formation. So we need to be able to come back to our familiar identity here. Unless you can truly dissolve every remnant of yourself into light, you will have a residual location in this seemingly flesh and blood body. And we need this body to function in the world, to work, to relate to people, to pay our taxes, and so on. Every aspect of being in the world with others, it arises as an illusion. So you have to pay your taxes. So you need to get money. You get money according to the way people or institutions are willing to attribute a value per hour to what you do. Some people's work receives 10 euros an hour. Some get 100 euros an hour. This is a conventional system of attributing value. Due to society's notions of the greater importance of some kinds of work than others, there is a monetary value attached to them. So you are paid what the relative conditions of the market allow. There is nothing fixed or definite in this. So the more you look at your ordinary being in the world, you see that it is truly like a dream. Our identity is composed of beliefs, what we believe about ourselves, what other people believe about us. So we don't want to lose our ordinary sense of self, but we want to thin it more and more until it's as fine as gossamer, as silk. And then, of course, when you experience that there is nothing to hold on to, then the process of sudden transformation in sickness or accidents or death is much easier to be with. So the next question is, how does anger relate to the water element? How can it be transformed into mirror-like wisdom? And how does it differ from the wisdom of dharmadhatu? So this immediately brings us to relative truth, even in dharma, because there are other ways of attributing these values in which anger is linked to fire, in the water element is linked to desire and attachment. It's so important to remember that all of these teachings are like a massage. They're ways of softening your rigidity and your desire to know exactly how it is. So some Lama at some time had a vision in practice, and they wrote down a correlation that anger is linked to water. Anger is linked to water for them, and because their students believe them, then their students believe also that is the correct correlation. And if you look at a lot of tantric practices, you'll see that they make many different kinds of links between these different appearances or categories. So the second aspect is, how can you see that anger is related to the mirror-like wisdom? If you can think of someone you don't like, someone who makes you angry, and you have feelings they are a bad person, then we go back and read, oh, there are no persons. There are only 5 skandhas, 5 heaps of constituents. Moreover, this terrible person I hate has friends, and they don't hate the person that I hate. So there is no inherent hateability in this object of my anger. So this person arises as a stimulus for my anger due to how I am in relation to how they are in this moment. They irritate me, but they don't irritate everyone. So this irritation is at least 50% mine and probably a lot more. So then I see, oh, my anger arises like a reflection in the mirror. There is an undeniable appearance. I feel angry, and yet the anger is a movement in my mind because it expands and contracts, heats up and cools down. And my sense of the other person as horrible varies in intensity. So I see, oh, this is like a scene in a drama in a dream. Both the constellation of I, me, myself in this moment and the constellation of the other are precise, like reflections in a mirror, and empty, like reflections in a mirror. And the third aspect of the question was, how does this mirror-like wisdom differ from the wisdom of the dharmadhatu? There is no real difference. These are ways of talking about that which we can't talk about. So many terms are used to describe how it is, but how it is only revealed in the silence of being present in it with our own mind. So the next question is how to release recurring karmic patterns such as fear and anxiety, which hinder the recognition of open presence. The answer to this is with patience. Don't try to do anything. All phenomena are impermanent. When some pattern arises in your mind and you identify it as an obscuration, as a cause of trouble for yourself, then you're attributing a particular power and potency to this constellation. And people say, yes, when I sit to practice and I relax, then anxiety arises. I want to be calm. I don't want to be anxious. When you take this attitude, you create the problem for yourself. The quality of open presence is that it has no bias or selectivity. As with reflections in a mirror, the mirror is not touched by ugly images, and the mind is not affected by fear or anxiety. It's our ego self which is affected by these moods and feelings. Yeah. So we relax in the out breath and we're patient. And if we're truly patient, both the fear and anxiety will dissolve, and this tight holding of an ego self will also start to dissolve. The fuel of the ego is belief. Things seem to be real and important when you believe in them, because your life energy is being poured into this image. If you don't leak, if you don't release prana or life energy into whatever is arising in the mind, it will remain thin and dissolve easily. So if you believe that fear and anxiety and self-doubt and self-hatred are obstacles to awakening, they will gain the power to function as obstacles through absorbing your belief in them. Well, the basic meditation instruction, as many of you know very well, is don't pull things, pull aspects of the field of emergence towards you, and don't push other aspects away. So if anxiety arises, you sit with the anxiety. Now, the problem that might arise at that point is that you believe that your mind should be bright and shining. And this anxiety doesn't feel bright and shining. It shouldn't be here. I have to get rid of it. But the very belief that I have to get rid of it somehow gives it the energy to stay. So we have to remember there is an absence of inherent existence in all phenomena. The anxiety is an energetic manifestation with no inherent defining truth to itself. If you leave it alone, it will dissolve. And if you react against it, you will feed it with more energy. So we don't have to do anything to release the phenomena which are in the mind, except leave them alone. We are The ego self is not in charge. The ego self is an imposter. Believing in the truth of the imposter is the main obscuration to the radiant openness of your own mind. So the next question is how to discern a thought as it arises rather than suddenly finding oneself lost in the thought or carried away by it. Oh, the key thing here is to, at the beginning of the practice, open yourself to the state of Rigpa, the inseparability of awareness and emptiness. Awareness is inseparable from the space of the mind. It's what we call the self-lucidity or the illuminating capacity of that space that is intrinsically right. So when you get filled by a thought or carried away by it, the one that who this is happening to is your ego self. You're wandering in something and then suddenly you realize, oh, I should be meditating. The receptivity of the ego self is like a container or a holder, and it holds the thought by seemingly merging into it. So I am sad, or I am thinking, or I am feeling. But this whole phrase, I am feeling this, is something arising in the mind. This is an arising pattern which then vanishes. So ease ourselves out of this, the ego's search for identity, for a place of belonging. We experience the mind as inseparable from space, which is that awareness of the dharmadhatu. Then you won't find yourself merging in what is arising. Then there are two secondary questions here. The first is it merely a problem for beginners? Yes. And secondly, is there a recommended technique to overcome this? There are many, many methods which help. In the pure or in the approach of purist Dzogchen, you don't apply any method. And you rely on the truth of the self-liberation of all phenomena. But you can also practice the 21 Semzin, which are ways of giving yourself an intense experience of an energetic formation, and then it stops. Now you're not in it. You were in it, and then you're not in it. And the more you practice it, the more you see that you can be spacious and in it, rather than being merged in what is arising. You offer spacious hospitality to what is arising. Because in Dzogchen, we are always concerned with space and the energetic manifestation in it, light and sound and so on. In Tantra, we are concerned with the nature of appearance. So Tantra is about transformation. I recognize when I'm sitting that I have a tendency to fall into and merge with thoughts, and I seem to be carried away. So the method of Tantra directly deals with this. You imagine Padmasambhava, Tara, whoever in front of you, and with a great deal of devotion, reciting some prayers or mantras, you're saying from your heart, I want to merge with you. So in a state of present awareness, I'm going to merge into this form of the deity. And then in your fusion, you dissolve into a ball of light, which vanishes into space. And then there is just emptiness. So according to the tradition, this is what we experience at death, when all the familiar reference points of our existence vanish and the mind is simply inseparable from space. So if you have become familiar with being inseparable from space, you stay relaxed and open at that point. If not, you're carried away by a stream of experiences which arise. So going back to the question, if you've been practicing Tantra, when the thought arises and you merge into it, you're in a fusional state. And when that fusion dissolves, there is a moment of nothing. This is the ground of awareness. If you can stay present in that, then the next thought which arises is arising manifestly from the ground of awareness. And in that way, the thoughts, feelings, memories, and so on, which were acting as an obscuration, are revealed as the clarity of the mind. So in the course of a day, when you are in different situations with different people, stay relaxed, whatever is happening, and try to be present with the transition of your manifest presence as it emerges according to circumstances. So if you're traveling to work on a bus, and the bus suddenly has to stop because some car has gone in front, and your body's thrown about a little, then you see, oh, some shock arises. Rather than conceptualizing, oh, that I'm scared or that was dangerous, and you see, I'm full of this, and then not, and then full, and then not. So in the tradition, they call this dangwa, which is like the crystal ball, which is put, if you put it on red cloth, it looks a bit red. You put it on blue cloth, it looks a bit blue. It appears as if the crystal ball has that taken on that color. But in fact, it is the translucence of the crystal ball which allows the color to appear as if it is in the crystal ball. In the same way, when the bus shakes and you're suddenly full of this shock, you're able to fill with shock because you're empty. Then maybe you turn and you look at someone else and they're shocked and you both laugh. Oh, wow, strange. And then something else, and then something else. So moment by moment through the day, you are filled with this and then not, filled with this and then not. If you stay with this, you see directly, I can only be filled with all of these different experiences because I'm not a fixed thing. Moreover, the shift in the environment shifts me. Sorry. This is the non-duality of self and other, or self and environment. So don't try to rigidly hold yourself apart, but stay relaxed and pliable and allow these various experiences to flow through you. If you do that, then because you are not blocking the arising in its coming, you don't block it as it goes. Okay. Then the next question, how to spread the truth of dharma, for example, impermanence and karma, when obscurations are everywhere and emotions like anger are intense. So why would you want to spread the truth of dharma? Do you want to be born as a Mormon in your next life? Generally speaking, Buddhism is not a missionary religion. Due to causes and conditions, karma ripens in us and we find a certain interest or openness to the Dharma. But if you did, for example, if you did want to give some flavor of a Dharma understanding to people who had no conscious interest in it, then you can, if you're in conversation with people and you're talking about climate change or the spread of the pandemic, and you can just observe with them that some countries get a lot of the vaccine and other countries don't get any. And like in Britain, where we've had a lot of the vaccine, the Prime Minister is very proud. We have achieved a great and wonderful quality of selfishness. Me first. I am best. I am entitled. So this is obvious, you can see it, not hidden. And this has been happening in every culture for hundreds and thousands of years. And we can see that if one group go up and get special resources, other groups go down and have less resources. Then we can try to unpack the story of we are good people because we have done so well. For example, in Britain now, there's some discussion about our historical involvement in slavery. And at one stage, people believed that slavery was very good because it brought money into the country. So they believed good for us. The focus of our concern is us, good for us, and we don't care about the other. So there you can see when you have a belief in duality and you have a polarization of self and other, then it seems obvious that if self is victorious and the other is defeated, then this is wonderful. So once you bring these two polarities together, if my victory is inseparable from your defeat, then your defeat has to be brought into our national story. Our happiness is now on the same plate as your suffering. And then my happiness is not so tasty. So there's this famous story from Engels describing industrialization in Manchester, a big town in England. And he described how the rich people, the factory owners, built their houses out in the country and then built a special train line that would allow their wives and daughters to go into Manchester to do their shopping without having to look on the houses of the poor people. It would spoil my day to have to see all these poor beggars in the street. I want to enjoy shopping for shoes, but if there are children with no shoes, it makes me feel bad. So please remove the children. So this kind of dualistic splitting is everywhere. In that way, ordinary life demonstrates the truth of the Buddha's teaching. But there's a second part to this question, which is very important, which is how to engage with this without being over aroused or cutting off. When we look at the cruelty and selfishness in the world, it can arouse strong emotions in us. If we are meditation practitioners, we need to release ourselves from this emotion. Because once you become aroused, you lose your equanimity and you lose your clarity. And then it's very easy to think these are bad people doing bad things. There are no bad people. Excuse me, but there is the play of the patterns of the 5 poisons and karma. And of course, if you get too immersed in it at a certain point, you burn up and burn out, and then you cut off. Then there's a question, is it still possible to have a guru-student relationship today? The social structure that we live in is not similar to a theocratic country like Tibet or a very vast nature-filled country like ancient India, where there were many yogis in the forest. The main basis for such a guru-student relationship is capacity in the guru and faith and openness to learn in the student. In countries like Tibet, people could have 10, 20, 100 gurus. One of these would be called the root guru because he would be or she would be the main person who would show the person the structure of their mind. That's the main point. If you come to study Dzogchen and you read the teachings or hear some of the teachings on tape and so on, you see that the main point is to find out what is your mind. And the key point there is to shift from thinking my mind is something I have to the direct revelation that my mind is the ground of I have. I have, I am, this is me. These are patterns of energy arising and passing in the mind. It is as if they are pointing to some true essence of self. But when you look again and again, you don't find any true essence of self. The continuity of the sense of self is the continuity of belief in the sense of self. So, generally speaking, our practice begins with taking refuge. I'm going to rest my life on Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and so on. This brings about a decentering of I, me, myself. So when you have devotion and you have your faithful heart and you open to the Buddha or to the Guru and the deities, the Dakinis, and so on, I want to be with you. You are liberation itself. Let me be close to you. Then the ego self arises as an obstacle. What about me? So then you find that you get distracted in your meditation. The distraction functions to keep installing the dualistic split of self and other. So when we're talking about devotion or one-pointed, undistracted attention, or merging into the heart of the visualized deity or the guru, these are all approaches to trying to repair the tear or split which installs self and other as opposites. Actually, this tear has never really occurred. But if you believe in it, it functions to install the delusion of a split. So, in the same way, we say all sentient beings have Buddha nature. The true intrinsic value of all sentient beings is the same. But if you have a belief in white supremacy, then you might believe that white people are intrinsically better than black people or Asian people. You see that these different types of people have their own essences, their own defining qualities, and that some are higher up than others, some have more qualities than others. So when you study the nature of cross-cultural interactions which have occurred, like from Asia to Europe and Europe to South America and Africa and so on, you see the tendency is always to look for a hierarchical schema. These are constructed interpretations, but they empower themselves by saying, no, we are the intrinsic truth. And if you believe that kind of truth, of course, you become very stupid because you're merging your mind into a fixed proposition. So when we start to open to the different ways that different people behave, we see an amazing variety of personality types, physical appearances, and so on. And then you see that the ways in which you attribute aesthetic value to other human beings depends on your own cultural template. So in my lifetime, in the early 60s, the cult of very thin women started to manifest. A painter like Rubens would be amazed. How come this fleshless scarecrow is supposed to be attractive? How is a woman without an arse a woman? So then we see these are cultural modes of interpretation. We are each of us born into particular periods of culture which have their own hierarchies of assumption. So in this time, in terms of the guru, the main function is to learn to read the world. Most people not living in Asia or in traditional Buddhist countries don't have much time or perhaps even interest to deeply study traditional Buddhist texts. This is not a major problem because Buddhism or Dharma is not a dogmatic system. It's not starting with dogmas and beliefs that you have to sign up to. In fact, it's saying the opposite. don't mix your perception with your belief. The more you can identify your cultural beliefs, your gender beliefs, your sexual orientation beliefs, and so on, then it's like taking off a whole range of distorting glasses. Then you start to have a more precise, accurate perception. Oh, if you study culture, history, just how people are in cafes or walking down the street, if you look clearly, you will start to see them manifesting dharma truth. And if you find yourself suddenly caught up in a strong judgment about how other people are behaving, then if you can recognize that, then you can see how blind your judgment makes you. Judgment is a dark illumination. It seems to be bringing clarity, letting you see more clearly, but actually it's wrapping what is there in front of you inside this belief system which you already have. The non-separation of subject and object is a dynamic, ever-shifting field of illumination. So, in the modern sense, the guru or the teacher can help you perhaps to learn how to see. But that's not a very good way to express it, because in fact, you're not learning how to see, but you're learning how to not be blind. The capacity for pure perception is intrinsic to the mind itself. The obscuring delusions that we are often caught up in have a beginning. They are not from the very beginning. They are created by other patterns of thought. So the more you see, the more you see that you don't see. And you start to see how lazy you are, how simple it is just to pull up an assumption, something you have already developed a belief in, and push it through as if it was the truth of the situation. This is the falsity of the ego, that it pretends to see when it simply believes. Oh, this is our path, to not be carried away by the familiar contents of the mind, so that they are thinned of their intensity. And then the teachings of Dharma are self-proving. They are obvious as we are more and more at home in the simple truth of how it is. Okay, so that's our time for today. We have a few more Wednesday evening meetings. And there is a meeting in May with Italian translation, as well, I think, as Spanish and Portuguese. And then some new activities will manifest when I am refreshed by the spring. So have a good evening, and we'll perhaps meet again. So thank you to our translators and the organizers, and the tape will be available soon.
Thank you, James.
James. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.